Nestled between a dense forest and the winding trails of a forgotten highway, the small town of Eldridge seemed like one of those places you'd pass through on a long road trip without giving a second glance. Few knew Eldridge for anything more than its old, creaky general store and a clock tower that hadn't worked since the late 60s. But locals knew the town for something else, whispered only in low tones and careful, guarded conversations, the legend of the knocker in the night. It was said that on nights when the fog rolled in from the forest, you might hear a gentle, deliberate knock at your door. Not the playful rapping of a neighbor's prank, but a single, rhythmic knock. Those who dared to open the door found nothing but the chilling echo of silence. Yet, if the knock was ignored, the knocker grew impatient, relentless, and things would go missing. A beloved pet, your favorite keepsake, or, on occasion, a person. This unsettling legend resurfaced sharply in the collective memory of the townsfolk one crisp autumn evening when 12-year-old Emma Weston vanished. Emma was last seen by her father, Paul Weston, when he tucked her in that stormy night. Her room, a sanctuary of childhood innocence, adorned with pastel walls and stuffed animals. But when Paul went to check on her at dawn, he found nothing but an empty bed and rain-soaked footprints on the wooden floor leading to an open window. Panic gripped the town like a vice. Volunteers scoured the woods, flashlights flickering in the mist, calling Emma's name into the void. But as the days turned to weeks, hope dwindled, leaving only whispers, some claiming to have heard the fabled knock that night. After Emma's disappearance, life in Eldridge crept on with an uncomfortable tension. Doors were locked tightly by sundown, windows barricaded not only against the chill of the coming winter, but also from an ancient fear. Yet despite precautions, the knock persisted. Several months later, just as spring began to bring color back to the world, strange occurrences started again. Dogs barked at invisible entities, cats went missing, and porch lights flickered ominously, the unsettling preamble for the next knock. Among those most perturbed was Claire Walters, a young woman who had moved to Eldridge almost a year before Emma vanished. She had settled in the fringes of the forest, drawn to the tranquility and isolation away from the turbulence of city life. Claire had heard of the legend from the town's gossips, aware but skeptical. That is, until the night she awakened with a start to the sound of a solitary knock echoing through her tiny home. Her breath caught. The air around her seemed to thicken, weighted with an inescapable dread. She lay still, acutely listening to the silence that stretched out after the knock. Then, there it was again, a slow, deliberate knock, almost expectant. Claire, whether from curiosity or a bristling unease, crept from her bed and moved toward the door, each step measured and soundless. Her hand paused on the doorknob, the cold metal biting into her skin. Her heart thundered in her chest, screaming caution. Yet, as if compelled by something beyond her own will, she cracked the door open to an empty porch. Nothing but the swaying trees in the distance and the chilling night air. She closed the door, locking it with trembling fingers. Sleep eluded her after that, her mind a whirlpool of conjecture and disbelief. By morning, she had resolved to uncover the truth about the knocker and Emma's disappearance. Something about the eerie mystery gnawed at her, an unsolved puzzle she felt drawn to piece together. Claire began her investigation subtly, speaking under the guise of neighborly visits, gently prying into the shared history of those vexing nights. She learned of Emma's delightful yet curious disposition, her sometimes wandering gaze as if she saw things others couldn't. Her small discoveries led her to Paul Weston, a man haunted by his daughter, his absence, shadowed eyes revealing sleepless nights and unending sorrow. It wasn't just a knock, you know, Paul recounted one gray afternoon, sitting at his worn kitchen table, surrounded by memories. It was her voice. I heard her voice outside, calling my name. His words hung in the air with a chilling certainty, an admission that made Claire's skin prickle. Yet something about Paul's account struck her. Had the knocker escalated, learned to mimic and lure? Or was it a ploy of guilt, seeking a way to absolve the impossible reality of losing a child? Desperate for more tangible answers, Claire turned to the forest bordering the town, an expanse of tangled underbrush that seemed to pulse with its own watchful energy. With the specter of Emma's fate beckoning, She braved the entangled paths one fog-shrouded morning, following the winding trails that whispered of secrets. Days of searching led her to a dilapidated house deep within the woods, almost swallowed whole by nature's reclamation. The bricks showed signs of age and disrepair, the roof caving in like a fatigued sigh. Curiosity drew her closer, though unease settled in her bones, as though the air itself resisted her presence. Inside, the house felt forgotten, but not untouched. In the dust-covered rooms, she found subtle evidence of recent occupancy. Footprints half erased, a room with neatly arranged dolls, one with a conspicuous gap. Then she saw it, etched into a soot-stained fireplace mantel, a simple, crude carving of a hand knocking, and below it what seemed like a string of letters, EM, barely visible in the dim light. It ignited a spark of recognition and horror. A noise broke the oppressive quiet, a soft rustling, perhaps the wind, but distinctly aware and too purposeful. Claire spun around, her heart hammering. The room remained empty, though it felt alive with presence, unseen yet palpable. The sudden sound of a child's laughter, ethereal and distant, cascaded down the corridor, drawing Claire into a visceral tension between flight and the irresistible need to discover more. Following the echoing sound led her to an upstairs room, decrepit but unmistakably reminiscent of a child's sanctuary. In the corner, beneath the murky light seeping through a shattered window, a wooden box caught Claire's eye. Its surface was polished, incongruously well kept amidst the decay. Inside, she found an array of items: a colorful marble, a small silver locket, a torn photograph, the kind of keepsakes that seem innocent until viewed through the lens of loss. One of the items, a faded Polaroid, the image blurry, showed a glimpse of Emma. But behind her, partially indistinct, was a shadowy figure, a dark blur where a face should be, standing just outside her bedroom window. Clarity hit like a physical blow. The sense of being watched in that forested house was not merely paranoia. Whatever haunted this place, whatever entity held the town in quiet terror, resided deeply entrenched within. Her heart raced as she fled the old house, the sun dipping below the horizon as the forest loomed ever more menacingly around her retreat. Yet, with the photo as a harrowing token, she intended to piece together the connection between the knocker, the presence, and Emma's disappearance. In her investigations, she broached the topic with an elderly historian at the town library, a woman by the name of Edith Livingston, who had lived in Eldridge all her life. Edith, thin and frail, with eyes still sharp as winter's ice, recounted the deeper lore beneath the urban legend of the knocker, stories shrouded in half-forgotten truths and folklore. A spirit, Edith explained, is tethered not by malice, but by a desperate yearning. The knocker, old as the town itself, is believed to be the lingering trace of a child lost to the forest centuries ago. They say she calls out, hoping to trick or trap another to share her solitude. Why would it target Emma? Claire pressed, driven by an urgent need for understanding. Why does the wind call your name or darkness grip at your soul? Sometimes the world beyond reaches out through the smallest cracks. Edith paused, a flicker of something resigned in her gaze. Emma may have heard the whisper before we ever noticed. The weight of understanding sank upon Claire like a stone. The urban legend was not just a myth, but a lingering echo of an ancient sorrow, a cycle needlessly perpetuated by a restless spirit bound to its yearning. Clarity came with grim determination. That night, fortified by knowledge but trembling with vulnerability, Claire decided to confront the knocker, face the spectral entity that hunted those alone in their beds, hoping somehow, impossibly, to liberate Emma and assuage the small, forsaken soul lost in the woods. When night descended like a velvet shroud, dense and impenetrable, Claire waited in her home and knocked, her senses attuned to every creak and whisper of the settling house. Then it came. The soft, deliberate knock reverberating through the space between dreaming and waking, where fear clings most resolute. Heart in throat, Claire approached her door, candle in hand casting ghostly shadows against the walls. Her fingers brushed the doorknob again, and with all her courage, she opened the door to a world swallowed by shadows. Empty save for a figure at the edge of sight. Small, expectant, a child's shadow more a memory than form. It regarded her with impossible eyes full of timeless yearning. Claire sensed the echo of Emma within, and beyond that, the countless others who had heard the knock and vanished, consumed by spectral longing. Resolute, Claire reached deep into her heart, offering the only thing she could, a promise to remember, to keep their memory alive, to give them peace by witnessing the truth of their unending vigil. Her words, sincere and steady in the night's pervasive quiet, rippled around them like gentle waves. For the briefest moment, the world held its breath. The shadow twisted, blurred, seeming to recede from the confines of loss to a place beyond mortal bounds. Claire watched, tears meeting the cold night air as the present sighed away, leaving behind only echoes of stories untold and the promise of an uneasy peace for Eldridge. Dawn came hesitantly, virginal light spilling across the town's frame. As if instinctively knowing the knocker had at last laid its tether to rest, the people resumed life with tentative hope, the legend fading slowly from dread into history. Yet, somewhere deep in the still woods, the old house remained, custodian to memories and whispers. Age-worn lessons for those who dared listen, that there are more things than dreams and waking in the world's forgotten corners. And sometimes, far away in her own quiet moments, Claire could almost hear the sound of laughter, delicate and distant, carried on the wind.